Welcome to a study in contradictions. This slide sets the stage for Architect and Outcast, a comprehensive look at the polarized life of James D. Watson. Visualized as a technical blueprint of the double helix, the content promises to navigate the tension between Watson's monumental scientific triumphs and the deepest ethical failures that define his double-edged legacy. It serves as an archival autopsy of a man whose contributions to molecular biology are as structurally sound as they are morally complex. By framing Watson as both a visionary designer of modern genetics and a social pariah, the presentation explores how the very code of life remains inextricably linked to the human flaws of its discoverer. This dual-strand timeline illustrates the parallel paths of James D. Watson's career. The upper strand tracks his ascent as a scientific titan, from the 1953 discovery of the double helix and his 1962 Nobel Prize to his leadership of the Human Genome Project. Conversely, the lower strand charts a descent into controversy. We see 1968 mark both a professional peak and the beginning of public backlash over his sexist treatment of Rosalind Franklin. The timeline concludes with a stark fall from grace, the auctioning of his Nobel medal in 2014 and the final 2019 stripping of his titles following repeated racist remarks. It is a visual record of a legacy where world-changing brilliance is permanently entwined with alienating bigotry. In this segment, titled Mutation of Interest, we trace the rapid intellectual evolution of a young prodigy. Phase 1 reveals a 15-year-old Watson at the University of Chicago, initially driven by a simple passion for ornithology and zoology. However, the 1946 reading of Erwin Schrödinger's What is Life? Acts as the ultimate catalyst, shifting his gaze from birdwatching to the chemical secrets of heredity. This pivot leads him to Phase 3. Joining the influential phage group under Salvador Luria. By age 22, Watson earns his Ph.D., having fully transitioned into a molecular explorer obsessed with the physical nature of the gene. It is the story of a scientific mind being rewired for a revolution. This matrix breaks down the high-stakes race for the double helix, contrasting the methodologies and rewards of four pivotal figures. While Watson and Crick used theoretical modeling to secure the 1962 Nobel Prize, the slide centers on the highlighted contribution of Rosalind Franklin. Her X-ray crystallography produced the definitive Photo 51, proving the phosphate backbone's location. However, her death in 1958 rendered her ineligible for the Nobel, which was shared by Watson, Crick, and Maurice Wilkins, who famously provided Franklin's data to the Cavendish team. Alongside Linus Pauling's erroneous three-stranded attempt, this table reveals a discovery defined as much by brilliant deduction as by the ethical complexities of data sharing and posthumous exclusion. In this sequence, titled The Information Heist, we examine the ethically fraught chain of custody for the data that unlocked the secret of life. It begins with the generation of the landmark Photo 51 by Rosalind Franklin and Raymond Gosling. Following interpersonal friction, the image is transferred to Maurice Wilkins. The narrative highlights a critical ethical breach when Wilkins reveals the photo to James Watson without Franklin's permission. This unauthorized reveal leads to the final epiphany. Watson recognizes the helical cross pattern, enabling Francis Crick to mathematically confirm the double helix. The slide portrays a scientific breakthrough powered by a clandestine acquisition, forever complicating the triumph of Watson and Crick with the shadow of a heist. Welcome to the blueprint of discovery, where four distinct scientific threads converge to solve biology's greatest puzzle. This slide illustrates the central synthesis achieved on February 28, 1953. We see the integration of Chargaff's biochemical base pairing rules and Pauling's 3D model building techniques. Crucially, Franklin's Photo 51 provides the crystallographic proof of the external sugar phosphate backbone. The final piece of the puzzle is Jerry Donahue's correction of textbook errors regarding hydrogen atoms, allowing Watson to realize how the bases truly fit together via hydrogen bonds. It is a visual testament to the fact that the double helix was not a singular stroke of genius, but a precise assembly of diverse data points and vital chemical corrections that finally clicked into place. In the paradigm shift, we witness the moment biology forever changed. On April 25, 1953, James Watson and Francis Crick published a deceptively modest one-page paper in Nature. Under the magnifying glass lies their famous, understated claim: the base pairing mechanism they discovered suggested how life itself copies its own instructions. This was the spark that transitioned biology from mere classification to a mechanistic, structural science, the dawn of the molecular age. For this, Watson, Crick, and Maurice Wilkins were awarded the 1962 Nobel Prize. However, the slide ends on a somber note, reminding us that Rosalind Franklin, whose data was vital to the discovery, died at just 37, leaving her ineligible for the ultimate recognition she so clearly earned. In Beyond the Helix, we witness James Watson's ambition transition from the static structure of DNA to the dynamic mechanics of life. During his Harvard tenure from 1956 to 1976, Watson's laboratory pivoted to the RNA quest, playing a vital role in pioneering research that demonstrated the existence and function of messenger RNA, mRNA, in protein synthesis. This era also solidified his influence as an educator. In 1965, he published the revolutionary textbook Molecular Biology of the Gene, which shifted the field's pedagogy toward a conceptual framework still emulated today. From the lab bench to the printed page, this slide illustrates Watson's evolution from a discoverer of the genetic code to a master of its expression and communication. In The Institution Builder, we witness James Watson's transition from theoretical discovery to administrative mastery. In 1968, Watson assumed the directorship of Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, an institution then on the brink of financial ruin. Leveraging his immense scientific prestige, he transformed the lab into a global powerhouse. Under his leadership as director, president, and chancellor, the laboratory aggressively pivoted toward tumor virology and cancer genetics, eventually yielding monumental breakthroughs like the discovery of RNA splicing. The accompanying graph illustrates a steady, decades-long ascent in the lab's influence and resources. It depicts a man who didn't just understand the code of life, but possessed the fundraising acumen and vision to build the very cathedrals where that code is still deciphered. In The Two Faces of the Double Helix, we examine James Watson's polarizing 1968 memoir. On one hand, the book was a literary triumph, hailed as a top non-fiction work of the century for its raw, humanizing portrayal of scientific discovery. By depicting the messy, competitive reality of research, it inspired a new generation of molecular biologists. However, the slide reveals a darker side to this success. The memoir was condemned by Crick and Wilkins for distorting facts, and its sexist caricature of Rosalind Franklin, mocking her appearance and using a nickname she loathed, remains a permanent stain on its legacy. This matrix captures the book as a perfect microcosm of Watson himself, groundbreaking and influential, yet undeniably marred by cruelty and bias. In The ELSI Equation, we see James Watson assume the mantle of the public defender. Leading the NIH's contribution to the Human Genome Project, Watson recognized that decoding the ultimate map required a robust moral compass. He pioneered the ELSI program, mandating that a portion of the project's budget address the ethical, legal, and social implications of genetic knowledge. This slide highlights his fierce battle against corporate gene patenting. Watson viewed the genetic code as a law of nature belonging to all humanity, not a commodity for profit. His 1992 resignation serves as a defiant final act of institutional leadership, framing him as a principled protector of our shared biological blueprint against the encroaching forces of privatization. In The Turning Point, we reach the irreparable fracture in James Watson's public life. During a 2007 Sunday Times interview, Watson unleashed a series of scientifically baseless, racist remarks regarding human intelligence, asserting that genetic differences made certain populations inherently less capable. The backlash was instantaneous. Despite a subsequent apology, the global scientific community's condemnation was absolute. Within weeks, Watson was suspended and forced into retirement from his chancellorship at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. This moment represents more than a simple controversy. It is the professional rupture of a 43-year tenure at the institution he had revitalized, proving that even a Nobel-winning architect could not survive the weight of such profound ethical and social failure. In this slide, The Unraveling, we witness the total disintegration of a titan's legacy. By 2014, claiming financial ruin and isolation, Watson became the first living laureate to auction his Nobel medal, a desperate act for a man once at the pinnacle of science. The collapse was finalized in 2019 when, during a PBS documentary, he refused to recant, doubling down on his racist views regarding IQ. This prompted the institutional excommunication. Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory stripped him of all remaining honorary titles. Represented by a crumbling, broken helix, the slide illustrates the tragic paradox of a man who decoded the blueprint of humanity, only to be cast out for failing to uphold its basic dignity. We conclude our archival journey with the dual legacy balance sheet, a final accounting of a life lived in extremes. On one side of the scale sits the architect, the man who decoded DNA, pioneered mRNA research, and built the foundations of modern genomics. But the scale tips heavily under the weight of his tragic flaws. From the sexist minimization of Rosalind Franklin to his scientifically baseless, bigoted claims regarding race and intelligence, Watson's personal prejudices ultimately overshadowed his professional triumphs. He ended his life stripped of the very honors he earned, a pariah within the community he helped create. This visual summary leaves us with a haunting truth: brilliance provides no immunity against the destructive power of human bias. Our narrative concludes with a warning for the century, reflecting on the long life of James D. Watson. It serves as a final, sobering reminder that scientific genius is not a moral bypass. The slide frames Watson's trajectory as a cautionary tale for our modern age, highlighting the inherent dangers of scientific exceptionalism, the false belief that technical brilliance excuses ethical failings. We are reminded of the extreme fragility of a reputation, where decades of institutional building and discovery can be dismantled by the persistence of personal bias. Ultimately, it issues a call to action for the scientists of tomorrow, to ensure that the innovations of the 21st century are built upon a foundation of empathy, inclusion, and social responsibility.